Hello there, many thanks for joining us on this morning's TVC Breakfast Show Business News segment. It's now time to bring you the feature on the show today as we focus on the telecommunications sector. Now, the Association of Licensed Telecom Operators of Nigeria have described the recent move by the federal government to add 1 kobo per second tax on phone calls as a bad move. According to it, now this is insensitive considering the operating environment of telecom companies. The federal government is proposing a 1 kobo per second tax on phone calls in the nation to fund free health care for the vulnerable group in the country. This was disclosed in the National Health Insurance Authority Bill 2021 signed by the President Muhammadu Buhari recently. Well, joining me now virtually to discuss this and much more, I have Oyindamola Agu, the Senior Manager, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte & Touche. Thank you very much for joining us on the Breakfast Show this morning.
Thank you very much, David, for having me on the show.
Now, government has introduced a new tax on phone calls to fund the provision of health care to vulnerable Nigerians who cannot afford the cost of medical care. This is quite commendable, but with an average call rate of 11 kobo per second, the new law implies at least 9% charge on every second of phone calls in the country. What do you make of this move by government, especially as we've had telecom operators in April propose a 40% increase in calls and SMS tariffs due to the rising cost of operations and also inflation overall? The kickback from subscribers also mimic that response where Nigerians cannot be paying more going by the current macroeconomic situations we have here. Your thoughts on this?
So, thank you very much for that question. Like you rightly stated, the federal government, by virtue of the National Health Insurance Authority Act 2021, has actually just recently introduced a new tax type, which is called the telecommunication tax. The tax on its own is just a levy on the phone calls at a minimum of 1 kobo per second, and it's effectively a minimum of 9% tax when compared to the average call rate of 11 kobo per second. The telecommunication tax is just one of the sources of fund specified under the Act and is targeted at a specific group called the vulnerable group. And the Act actually defined what this vulnerable group is all about. Basically, about 4 categories. First is the children under age of 5. We have the pregnant women. We also have the physically or mentally challenged people. We also have the age as well as the indigent. So the word indigent there is just to describe, it can be defined from time to time. We will definitely need guidance as to who and who indigents will be. Currently, when we look at the state of our Nigerian health finance system, it's actually it's cause for cause to worry because they've had certain challenges in the past. For instance, they've been complaining around the issue of inadequate funding, lack of medical infrastructure, restricted access to quality medical care facilities. And I'm aware that lots of Nigerians actually fly out abroad just to see quality health care. And so based on that, I would say the initiative by the president is somewhat commendable. I mean, if you're able to allow the vulnerable group to enjoy healthcare services, quite frankly, healthcare services is also a fundamental basic human rights that I think it's a welcome development. However, as you say, it's a step in the right direction. We are aware that federal government cannot fund this healthcare alone, and so federal government will also need to approach the initiative with caution as regards how it's being funded.
And if I may button here, looking at the broader picture of tax administration in the country, how critical would you say it is to have transparency in our tax system? There are current issues around multiplicity of taxes, efforts towards tax harmonization, which we haven't yet gotten so right, and then automation of tax processes for seamless tax compliance. How well would you say the nation has fared, is faring, the reforms captured in the Finance Act and the prospects for tax administration in the country in the future?
Transparency, it's quite key for every tax system to be transparent, especially if such economy wants to attract investors or you want to strengthen the public finance of the economy. Nigeria has a target of 15% to increase the tax to GDP ratio. And so we do not want to be in a position where our tax transparency is poor. Otherwise, we'll have leakages in revenue, abuse of the tax system. And so it's very important for Nigeria to be mindful. What the layman wants to, what they're about is they want to see that Nigeria is able to account for the taxes when collected by them and how the taxes will be useful to them. So as a form of recommendation to the government, I would say accountability is key. If it's possible to have some sort of reporting obligations around disclosures on the part of the GSM companies and public disclosures around how the tax revenue is tied to the calls made to customers. So we are with further guidance from the tax authority in that regard. And that's not to say that federal government is not putting in effort. We've seen certain initiatives by them in the past. They've actually signed some multilateral competent authority agreements with respect to the AUI, the Automatic Exchange of Information, which is also geared towards the fostering tax transparency. So it's an example to show that transparency is key for the government and they are looking towards that sector. However, I would say on the issue of multiplicity of taxes, the federal government has a bit diverted from the purpose of the national tax policy is all about. The tax policy actually aims at ease of doing business, trying to see how we can reduce the taxes and not to multiply the taxes. And so, if you're going by this new approach of introducing this technology tax, definitely it's going to affect ease of doing business. It's going to affect SMEs. It's going to affect telecommunication companies. So these areas we need to look at. The government needs to take a look at again. Possibly try and see if we can have a reduction in the tax rates. The tax rates at 5% is quite high compared to other jurisdictions. I'm aware the Ghanaian tax authority. It used to also be 9% tax rate, but it's been reduced to 5% now. So we might want to look at how to reduce the taxes. Telecommunication companies are just complaining.
Well, Damilola Agu, for the lack of time, we'll just have to end this conversation. And definitely, looking at all of the updates within the tax administration space, we still need a whole lot more to discuss, especially within the range and how well we fare. Thank you once again for your time on The Breakfast Show this morning. Damilola Agu, Senior Manager, Tax and Regulatory Services, Deloitte & Touche. That's it from the business desk this morning.